Michael told us we need to change the name of our podcast, of which we've done 451 episodes.
Everything we thought we knew got shooken up, and it was super uncomfortable. But what landed was more of the truth, and I am so convinced.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the HyperConscious podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, a live mastermind on how to transform your weaknesses into strengths. Today, for episode number 453, we are going to talk about why constructive criticism is a good thing.
We've got some new lights in the studio, thanks to Kevin.
We're leveling on up here.
They're blue/purple. They match the avatar, and also my water. My water is blue.
Wow, that's wild. They do
Everything is blue
Hold on.
for me and for him.
I'm blue.
And
Da-bo-dee-da-bo-da. Hold on, let me real quick for those watching.
Oh, now it's red.
No, it's color. Now it's just going to change colors. What else we got?
Cool.
But the problem is it doesn't stay on the same color because it's on two different things.
Think we should add some value at some point?
Definitely add some.
All right, so if you just made it through that, you now can listen
You're
to the
a
rest.
champion.
Okay, so why constructive criticism is a good thing? So,
I don't even like the word constructive criticism. I think it should be constructive feedback.
I agree.
But we named it that because I think more people than not associate those two words together. Constructive criticism.
Yeah. So first and foremost, feedback is a good thing. And I guess you wanted to do this episode when we got into the studio today. Why?
So Alan and I are now blessed. I don't want to use the word lucky. We are blessed to be coached by two of the most successful people in this industry. David Meltzer, you guys have heard him in our live coaching calls many times. Can you?
What?
I'll do it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. And then now we are lucky enough to be coached one-on-one by Evan Carmichael, which is amazing. And Dave is very future-oriented, and Evan is very now and very take action now, which is the way I love learning. That's the way I teach as well. But one thing he said was, well, he said many things, right? So we got on his Instagram Live.
Yes.
And he coached us, and he hammered us.
Yeah.
And Evan is...
Especially me.
Yes, definitely Alan. But one of the biggest things, and this could be the biggest thing that has ever happened in the history of the HyperConscious podcast, he said we should change our name.
Yeah.
He actually said you need to change your name because nobody knows what HyperConscious is.
Yeah.
And we are very much considering it because at the end of the day, we want to impact as many people as possible.
Right.
And we know what HyperConscious is.
Yeah.
You guys, if you're watching or listening to this, might know what HyperConscious is, but who just comes across the name and says like, oh, that sounds like something I want more of? I don't think a lot of people know that. And this is why constructive feedback is a good thing.
Right.
And it's also, you have to understand who's talking to you, and you have to be careful on who you're taking advice from.
Yep.
But Alan and I literally, when we got off that call, we were like, we're not changing the name. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening. And as we kept kind of talking it over, I talked to Taryn about it. We talked about that with the team. We came to the realization that, you know what? I think Evan, not only is Evan right, we probably should have figured this out before he brought this up to us. So
Right.
I think constructive feedback, as long as you know what to do with it and you know whether or not you should take it, is always valuable.
Absolutely, and it's from the right person. I think that what's interesting is if you don't like feedback, it's most likely on some level because you have a fixed mindset. And so in the last episode where we were being coached by David Meltzer, we talked about an infinite game versus a finite game. And you've also talked about the book by Carol Dweck about fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yes.
We talk about that a lot. If you have a growth mindset and the focus is to grow as much as possible and learn as much as possible, you actually encourage feedback. You want feedback. You know, I've talked a lot about a client who basically said, I want you to be as hard on me as you are on yourself. And I remember when she first said that, and I was like, wow, like I'm like, are you sure? Like, I'm ridiculously hard on myself. And ever since that moment, there are things that I've told her that I wouldn't have had she not asked for that. And so usually when I'm coaching someone, I say 0 to 10, how hard on you do you want me to be? How truthful do you want me to be? Nietzsche has a quote of like, your success will come down to how much of the truth you can handle, right? We want to believe things are all this certain way or that we're this certain way. But the truth is that we're not, and we need to work on ourselves. And so the question, if you're out there right now, if you don't like constructive feedback, it's most likely because on some level, you're not believing that you can use it to get better, and or it's not a focus to get better. Because if the focus really was to get better, you would actually want constructive feedback. And I'm actually working really hard lately to try to understand when I have that wall up. Like Emilia's always asking me questions. She's always asking me about different things I could do in corporate, and she's so growth oriented. It's like unreal. And so sometimes I'll like have this block when she'll ask me a question, and I'll notice it. And I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, wait, I'm just clinging on to certainty right now because there's so much uncertainty. And what I really want is to contemplate and understand. So I guess if you're out there right now and you're already overwhelmed, even though you have a growth mindset, you might actually be against feedback in the moment. If you're in a resourceful state and you're growth minded, you're most likely going to ask for it. And I would argue that we should all be asking for it more if it's someone we trust.
I think a lot of, and I'm guilty of this, I think I used to take it personally.
Right.
Right? Like, and that's the thing. Before this call with Evan, I was terrified.
I know.
And Alan was like, why are you like nervous? And I said, I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to go off the rails a little bit in a good way.
Right.
And, you know,
it certainly did.
It wasn't personal.
Right.
But Evan's really good at depersonalizing things. Like, look, I don't care. I don't care that you didn't do this. Like, you should have done it.
Right.
Stop making excuses. But with him, it's not personal. It's more like, look, I believe in you so much that you not doing this literally disappoints me. And I've really adopted that when it comes to my coaching too.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a number of reasons why you might struggle to take feedback. And we've talked about feedback so many times. But if it's constructive, it is probably most likely with your best interests at heart.
Right.
Right? If you're hiring a coach, you are actually you're hiring somebody to give you constructive feedback.
Right.
Somebody who is further along than you to ask you where you're screwing up. And that's literally what we asked Dave. We asked Evan that. You know, Dave and Evan give us different answers, right? But I think if you're not going to ask for constructive feedback, it's going to take you way longer to succeed.
Yep.
You're not leveraging your relationships and your mentor's dummy tax to the level that you could. Mm-hmm. And you're only going to get like half the impact or half the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not the results, but like half of the potential that you actually could get if you just went all in and said like, look, where am I screwing up? Amy asked me on our call this week. She said, hey, and she wouldn't mind me sharing this, I'm sure. She said like, okay, I have a couple questions. And I was like, oh, awesome. I love when people just bring questions.
Right.
And she's like, all right, this one I'm really scared to ask. Like, oh God, let me ask the other one. I said, no, ask me that one now. Like, ask me the one that scares you. I want you to ask me that one.
Fire.
And she said, okay, like where, from your perspective, where do you think I could be doing better? And I was like, Amy, that's an amazing question. I'm so proud.
Right.
Like, I'm so proud that you asked that question. Right. But she trusts that I'm not going to slaughter her and be like, well, okay, let me pull out the list. I have the list on my phone.
Let me pull out the list.
But she knows that if I'm going to try to help you, it's going to be from, like, I want to build you up. I want to help you I'm not going to tear you apart.
What'd you tell her?
I said,
if you don't mind sharing.
No.
Yeah.
No, and I don't think Amy would care.
No.
Exercise. She's been saying that she's going to exercise for a while now, and she's been making some excuses. And I said, Amy, I don't care.
Right.
Like I'm up at 4 a.m. so I can exercise. Like, you know, if you want to exercise, make it a priority, or it's not going to get done.
Right.
If you don't, then that's fine. But I think you're jeffing if you don't. And she said, no, that you're right. Like, I've been making excuses, you know. So
right.
I think two things. Number one, have the courage to ask. Number two, have the courage to take the actual feedback and not shell up or not be offended or not write the person off because they didn't say what you want them to say. Evan Carr, 451 episodes of, we use hyperconscious as a verb, the Hyperconscious podcast. Right? Like, everything is hyperconscious. And we didn't take it so well, but upon further reflection, I think it might be the best thing for the brand.
He went to our YouTube channel live on his Instagram with people watching and told us everything we're doing wrong. And it's a micro challenge for a macro win. And now we've implemented those changes and we're far better for it. And I remember Evan Carmichael, when he first came on this show, he said, I challenge you. You guys are great. You guys need to be doing more content. You're doing 2 episodes a week. I think it was 2 at that point. And he's like, you should be doing 3 at least, you know? And he's like, I challenge you. And then have me back for episode 250. We ended up having him back for like 3 something, I think.
No, I think it was before. I think we had him before 250.
Did we?
I think.
And then we had him again in the 3s or the 4s. I don't know. Who knows?
We've had him on 3 times.
At the end of the day, you either seek challenge or you seek comfort. And uncomfortable conversations, when I look back, you know, one of my mentors, the CEO of the tech companies. He messaged me today. It was really cool. He's like, hey, it's been a while. How you been? How are things going? And in my head, it's like, yes, that's awesome. Because now I get to, ask him if he wants to sit down and hang out. And every single one of those conversations, I'm always asking him his perspective. And whether it's Alex Goad, shout out to him, or it's Brant Pinvidic, or it's Evan Carmichael, or it's David Meltzer, or it's this mentor who wants me to keep him anonymous, or my Aunt Joanne, like every single time I got on those calls, it was definitely things I didn't want to hear. And maybe it wasn't 100% true, but there was 40, 50, 60, 70% truth in there. You got to find it. So like, let's say Evan Carmichael says this thing, okay? That doesn't mean it's gospel. Evan doesn't know everything. He doesn't know the entire circumstance. So for example, and just to bring this down to earth, if you're on YouTube right now, you realize that we're not nearly as big on YouTube as we are on iTunes. Right. Evan was on our YouTube channel. So does Evan know how big we are with our brand HyperConscious on iTunes? No, probably not. And so he's telling us everything based on his awareness. That doesn't mean he's 100% right. But here's what you do. You sit in the uncomfortability, the discomfort. Sit in the uncomfortability. Sit in the discomfort. And then you let the snow globe shake. And I do this every week with Emilia with check-in. Same thing. Shake the snow globe. Okay. And then you just trust that the snow is going to land. And that when the dust settles, you're going to have more awareness than you did before. That happened when you thought about suicide. That happened when I got in my car accident. Everything we thought we knew got shooken up, and it was super uncomfortable. But what landed was more of the truth. And I'm so convinced that on the last episode with Dave, you asked him, you said, how do I know what to ask you when I don't know what I don't know? And it was a fire question because he basically said, you're never going to know what you don't know. You just kind of have to assume that you don't know and then stay in the learning zone. And you got to go a little bit in the anxiety zone so that your learning zone expands, but not too much to where you crash and burn and can't get out of bed. And so I think that proactively seeking feedback from a resourceful place is really important. If you're already really, really struggling, be careful about asking for feedback when you're in an unresourceful state, because then you might get angry, you might overreact, all that kind of stuff. I
think it's interesting that you're talking about Brant. I actually texted Brant the other day. Brant and I have been chatting a bit. Nice. But I remember literally, I don't think I ever told this on the podcast. Tara and I were out to lunch one day, and my phone rings. It's actually on silent, so I didn't know. I just happened to see it. Brant Pinvidic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I looked at Tara and I was like, I got to take this. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, no, absolutely. And he's like, hey, man, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I was thinking of you. Like, I got a bunch of other clients. I'm going to start a podcast too. Let's like line something up. And I'm like, so for me, that was constructive feedback. The fact that I was afraid to take that call, that's feedback of like, oh, you're not nearly as next level as you thought you were. Right? But it's your job, if you're watching or listening to this, to make it constructive. Because I think most people use that as destructive. Oh, I'm not where I want to be. Cool. You'll never be where you want to be, first of all.
Right.
Right? And so, like, reverse that relationship. Cool. But Brant's still calling me.
Yeah.
Brant's still calling me, so that's an opportunity for me to level up. So I texted him the other day and said, hey, man, I remember you want to start a podcast. Yeah. I know you're out shark diving and doing God knows what else.
Yeah, and snowmobiling in the Arctic.
Yeah, doing all these things. But I'd love to get on the phone and talk about it if you're interested. And he said, yeah, I'm doing these other business things. I'd absolutely love to chat. Now, I feel a lot better now. I use that feedback constructively.
Right.
And now when I'm talking to Brant, it's like, I know I have a ton more value than I did. So I would just say every single opportunity that comes as feedback there is an opportunity for constructive.
Yeah, always.
Construction. I guess you could use it as construction. Even if somebody like tears you apart, there's different ways to look at that. You can say, woe is me, I'm terrible. Obviously, they know I'm really like I'm an imposter. I'm not really good. Or look, that person is taking their negative energy and they're trying to transfer it to me.
Yeah.
Then you can construct yourself through that. So I would say that as well.
Do you remember when we were in Florida and we watched all Ryan Bliss's movies?
Yes.
So we had Ryan Bliss. He's a dear friend of mine. We grew up together. He was kind of like my brother for a long time. And my parents were close friends with his parents. We had him on the show. And we were preparing for that in Florida, and we were watching all of his movies.
Yes. In T-Mac's kitchen.
In T-Mac's kitchen, yeah. Big TV.
He's got TVs in every room.
Yeah, he does. I saw a photo recently of the launch house.
Yeah.
Took me back.
Yeah.
Did I send it to you and Eddie, I think, or something like that?
I don't know.
Such a trip to circle back. But anyway, so we watched his movies. One of them is, I think it's called Winter Harvest. One of them is called Rot. And then one of them was called Clover. And they got so much better. It's like ridiculous. The Winter Harvest, he was like an actor and a director, and it was like brutal, like home movie. And then the next one was like a little bit better, but still a little wonky. And then the third one was fire. And now he has Alice Fades Away. What I think is interesting, and this is one thing that I'll give kudos to Ryan Bliss about. Ryan Bliss cares about being the best at his craft. And so he takes feedback so well. He always asks, every time I've been to dinner with him, like, what did you think? What did you think about the movie? What did you get it? Like all this stuff. And at one point, he has a movie called Alice Fades Away that's premiering soon. And he actually said to me, Alan, I realized I'm ruining the movie. I'm too close to the project, and I decided to hire a Hollywood editor to like edit it because I'm too attached. I'm too emotionally attached. And of course, he understands the story.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he wrote it and directed it, and like every scene is like his baby, you know, because so much goes into that. And so this is why a lot of directors don't edit their own movies, because they want the editor to come in with fresh eyes and see it from the audience's perspective, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. So when it comes to taking feedback, realize that what you work on is very emotional. It's an artistic craft. Like you with the HyperConscious podcast. Like how much emotions do we have tied to that name?
Well, that's a great parallel to what we're going through.
I know.
What Ryan Bliss did. Like,
right.
We are too close to this.
Exactly.
We are hyper-conscious. This is our brand, but this is our life. What we should be doing, and that's what we're going to do, is what's best for the listener.
Exactly.
What's best for you guys.
For the business, for the listener, for the impact, right? And so how do you personally detach?
We have to go.
Oh, wow.
We can hammer a question.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah.
So how do you personally, so like after this, I'm going to ask you constructive feedback. I try to do that after every single thing. I try to do that with Emilia, with you. After the mastermind, same deal. How do you take feedback that's really challenging? Like what's a tip that you can give someone? And one thing I'll say just quickly, you got to understand that the feedback is not your identity. Just because you did a bad podcast episode doesn't mean you're a bad podcaster. It just means that maybe you have some things you can improve, right? But emotionally, it's like, oh my God, am I bad? Am I the worst? Right? All that stuff. So understand that everything's figure outable, and I think it'll be better. But what's your take?
That's kind of the same for me. Is like it's not final,
right?
It's just that just means like, okay, now I have an update, a status update on where I actually am, right? Like I think for me, and I'll use check-ins. Like last night, Taryn and I had a check-in,
right?
And there's always some stuff that's like, oh geez,
yeah,
you know, it's painful,
right?
But my thing is always to say like, let me settle it. Let me make sure that I understand it. And then like, okay, I just have to get a little bit better when it comes to that.
Can you give an example? And then we'll go. If you're willing to share.
I'm just trying to think of the specifics of last night. So doing more romantic things, right? Like I used to leave a lot more love notes and do like more romantic things. And I think I've just kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah.
I'm not as good with that as that was literally my answer is like, oh, I could do better.
Right.
And, you know, Taryn said, like, well, I understand maybe that's not as natural for you. That doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of things aren't necessarily natural for me, but if you value them, it's my job to do them.
Right.
So for me, I just say like, well, it's my job to make sure that I get better at that. And I've signed up for that. That's what I want. I want us to keep growing. I want to make sure that I'm being the best version of me for you. Mm-hmm. So I think separating, like you said, it's not my identity. I'm not a non-romantic person. I just haven't been practicing those things.
Right.
And understanding that it can be changed.
100%.
Just because it is the way it is doesn't mean it is the way it is forever.
It's the one that you've heard me say if you've listened to the show for a while. You can either feel good or be good. The coach that helped me the most, and I'll never forget this, like shout out to Alex Goad, the coach that helped me the most actually hurt me the most in the moment. So micro pain for macro success. And in hindsight, with a new awareness, I appreciate Alex. I appreciate you for what you did for me, because you were trying to help me, even though it really did suck. And I feel you, because I do that with a lot of people. And sometimes I'm, seen as the bad guy, when in reality I'm trying to be the best guy.
Fire. Ladies and gentlemen, we are creating, and by we I mean the team, Natalie, Tiff, and Amy. I think Natalie is heading this operation. We are creating a deep dive PDF into basically like
Oh, yeah.
a lot of stuff that we've gone through on these masterminds, but if you don't have 25 hours to go through everything we've ever gone through on a mastermind, this is going to be like a deep dive to help you when it comes to health, wealth, and love. We're going to have the system of success. We're going to have the relationship check-ins. We're going to have some from the top 10 ways to be consistent.
Yep.
All sorts of different things.
Manifestation.
Fitness, all things. This is going to be an unreasonably valuable PDF for free. We're not charging for it. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of that now to build up a little hype around it.
Yeah,
because it'll be coming out in the next few weeks. We were going to do a free course, a video course, but I think we're going to work on something better.
In general.
Amen. We're going to do a course, but it's going to be different.
Yes. So also, if you go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on hashtag HyperConsciousNation, you will join a like-minded growth community.
Yeah.
You know who I saw yesterday was Emily. So shout out to Emily, Emily McRae, a client of mine, dear friend. And the last time I saw her in person was Top Notch Live.
Oh, wow.
Why am I bringing up Emily right now? It is unreal how different she is than when I first met her, man. It's crazy. It's like she would be unrecognizable to her 2-year ago self. And it's because of one thing. She got around incredible human beings, period, who are growth oriented. And that's not a testament to me or to you, but she's been friends with Amy. Like Amy introduced her to us. She's been listening to the show. Tom's been listening to the show ever since. Like shout out to them. Don't underestimate what can happen when you get a part of a community. Like this community will change your life. It will, if you want it to. And HyperConsciousNation is the place to do that.
Hyperconscious might be going away.
I know. Yeah.
That hurts me. We'd love your feedback on that as well. I think we're going to probably change the name. We're thinking Next Level University.
Oh, yeah?
I don't remember what the tagline was.
How to level up your love.
Yeah. Your life.
No, your life, your love, your health,
and
and your wealth.
Because that's kind of what we're all about. We're about leveling up everything. So we would love DM me, DM Alan, whatever, Facebook, all that happy jazz. Let us know what you think. But I do think it's time for a little bit of a rebrand. Nothing is going to change in terms of
content,
who we are as a person. But if we do want to change the world and we want to make more of the world hyper-conscious, we should probably change the name so more people will listen to the show. We hope you enjoyed. Up next, we are going to do an episode on, and this is going to be a great title, You Will Fail If You Think Like This.
Fire.
We're going to go through a cycle that produces failure and a cycle that produces success. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.